Hey, this is Greg Graziani from Graziani Reptiles, and you're listening to Herp Herp Hooray.
It says here we should work in teams. I tend to think of myself as a one-man wolf pack.
You are about to enter information overload, a worldwide transmission with Herp Herp Hooray's featured Breeder of the Week. Here's your host, Jason Rossi.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Herp Herp Hooray. This is my first show of 2013. I'm your host, Jason Rossi. We're streaming on Stitcher Radio, iTunes, and RossiReptiles.com. I'd really like to thank Sean Bradley for filling in the last 2 weeks. He did an outstanding job, so good of a job I didn't think I had one to come back to. Really, he's like 1,000 times better than I am, so hopefully one day I can be as good as him. So again, Sean, thank you very much. Got a big announcement. While Sean was filling in, I wasn't on vacation. We were working, but somebody was working even harder. I'd really like to thank David Weimert for helping me put together the Herp Herp Hooray forum. He did an outstanding job on that, and it's a first-class site and second to none, so we'd really appreciate you guys go on over there and take a look at it and sign up and register. We're looking for a few good ladies and gents to help mod the forum, so if that sounds something that you'd be interested in, just go on over there and shoot us a message and we'll hook you up. We're beta testing it now, so why don't you go on over there and share some of your knowledge, and it's over on our temp site there on RossiReptiles.com. You'll see the forum link. All right, on with the show. This week's featured breed of the week is considered one of the pioneers and definitely a leader in our industry. Greg Graziani from Graziani Reptiles and Python Hunters is this week's special guest. Greg, welcome to Herp Herp Hooray.
Hey, how you doing? Good to be here.
Awesome, man. Well, we do appreciate you coming out, man. We definitely want to get you back, though. Commit to that to get you on to do a genetics show with us. We really appreciate that.
No problem.
All right, you're a busy guy, man, between the reptiles and the show, so how do you find time for it all?
Every time I finish one project, I think I'm going to have a lot more time, and it seems like two more take the place of that one project. So I just, between the family and the kids and the reptile breeding business, the television series and the conservation efforts that we're involved in, it's just nonstop.
You're definitely a busy guy, man. So how did you get your start in breeding reptiles?
I started keeping reptiles 1976 when I was 7 years old. I just was fascinated by snakes, and I started keeping at that point. And up until the real late 80s, basically early 90s, everything we had was either imported animals or wild caught stuff. Even the corn snakes and king snakes. Very few people actually were doing any breeding at that point. There were some old timers that were breeding some things or accidentally bred some things, and myself until I got into breeding Burmese pythons. Anything that I produced was pretty much either caught gravid or an accident. At that point, but that was my passion, and when I started, I can remember my grandfather asking me, "How are you going to make a living with reptiles?" And at that point, I really didn't know, because there was just a handful of zookeeper jobs that specialized in reptiles, and this whole industry didn't even exist when he asked me that question. So I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and so interested in the genetic color and pattern mutations of Burmese pythons that seemed like a no-brainer to me to start working with ball pythons because of the space that these little giant pythons took up. We could do so much more, and we figured maybe you have 5-10 tops mutations to work with, and even those could give you almost an infinite number of combinations. I just had no idea of what the ball python industry was going to turn into, and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. It was kind of like Mr. Ford in his garage building that first car. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
So was the pastel jungle your first morph that put Graziani Reptiles on the map?
That is the big one. I can't take credit for the name. Kevin McCurley and I produced the mutation the same year. I think I beat him by a month or two in actually producing the mutation. And at the time, I called it a Type 2 jungle. About 2 months later, when he produced an identical-looking mutation, I just thought it was really foolish to have two separate names of the same mutation. I thought that would get really confusing. Little did I know how confusing it was going to get with all the names that people were going to come up with hundreds of different mutations. And I went over. I mean, he really nailed it. The pastel jungle was that mutation. And it's funny because a lot of new people that get in, they go, well, what's the difference between a pastel and a pastel jungle or a jungle pastel? And they just don't know the history. And there's so many of these mutations that actually had longer names, like the spider was originally the spider webbed, and the cinnamon was the cinnamon pastel. And a lot of these things just got dropped because we're adding so many combinations that it just got too lengthy. And a lot of people that are new don't realize that's where a lot of these names came from.
Kind of have to make it simple, take it back to just naming things what they are, because it's definitely going to get confusing here in the future.
That's one of the things that I typically do when I post a photograph. There's so many terms that start out meaning one thing and then are kind of slangily used something else. The term super and the term killer when referred to pastels typically means the same thing. But a killer blast and a super blast, are different. One of them is a super pastel pinstripe, and the other one's a super pastel spider pinstripe. And for me, my ID system labels, there's an acronym for every individual mutation, so they line up pretty much dominance first in alphabetical order, followed by recessive genes in alphabetical order. And that allows me to look at these things and know exactly what's in it instead of what crazy name somebody came up with this week for an animal with 5 genes in it.
That's a pretty cool method there. I'm going to have to take notes and try that out. I mean, I'm always trying new things when I hear it, just
right.
You never know what's going to work.
No, like I said, I've been working on this system for a long time. So far, I haven't come into any duplicates because I use a 2 to 3 letter acronym, and it hasn't ended up like some airports that are like XYZ because somebody else already had those acronyms. I haven't gotten to that point yet.
I'm sure you will. But another morph that you guys are working with over there and kind of started it out there, the cinnamon pastel, right?
Yes, that was the second mutation that I proved out here with our bloodline, and there were a lot of similar things going on at the same time. I know Chris and Sheila McQuaid were working with a similar bloodline, and so was Brian Barzak and a few others, and that's where we ended up with the cinnamon pastels out of our line, and then the black pastels out of some of the other lines. And they're kind of they're like the butter lesser controversy. Are they same thing or are they different? More than likely, they're basically the same complex, and there may be some protein levels that are different, which is one of the theories that I have when we talk about the blue-eyed Lucy complex and the black-eyed Lucy complex and the ivory complex. I think you have basically a whole range of the same mutation, and you have different protein levels, which is giving a different super version or homozygous version of that animal.
Now, the ivory isn't a black-eyed Lucy, or is it considered one?
Initially the ivory was the leucistic that or what Pete Call, I believe, thought he was getting as leucistic turned out to be an ivory. But the ivory is that whole yellow belly complex where you've got the super stripes and the yellow bellies and the highways and the pumas and all that kind of stuff. and they are different from the black-eyed